Ettienne, the bearer of bad news, thank you so much for your time.
Don't shoot the messenger.
I mean, we laugh, but this is incredibly important because, I mean, business confidence is one of the important keys for getting this economy out of the recession that it's in. How is it that it continues to recede from what we saw in December last year when business essentially got its way and it got the man that it wanted to run the country
Yep. So interesting, in the first quarter we had an 11-point jump in the index to 45, then down to 39 in the second quarter and down an additional point to 38. So what is concerning here, Fifi, is the direction. That's the one thing. We're going in the wrong direction as far as confidence is concerned. And then also secondly, quite interestingly, is that there's not a single sector. We survey 5 sectors, so there's not a single sector that has a confidence level above 50. So it tells you that the pressures are really widespread in the South African economy, and that is very consistent with an economy that is battling and, as we know, are in recession. So history is very clear that you cannot get fixed investment to accelerate and growth, fast economic growth, if you can't lift confidence.
Right.
That is quite important. So that should be the focus of the government. How are we going to get business people, corporate South Africa, much more involved and more upbeat about the future of the country?
Okay, we'll get to that because I just want to understand just how much of the confidence index for this third quarter was impacted by global factors, and which global factors are we talking about here?
Yes, so that would typically affect exporters, for example, right? If global growth is slowing down or growth in your export destinations is slowing down, that could affect the mood for manufacturing exporters, for example. But it can also, global factors can also affect the mood of retailers through the exchange rate. If the currency weakens, as it has done, quickly there would be fears that inflation will be going up and the central bank will soon follow high inflation and high interest rates, and that can dampen the mood of retailers, particularly those that are selling durable and semi-durable goods, for example. So global factors matter, but local factors matter as well. So it depends on the sector, and obviously the specific respondents that we have in those sectors that we ask these questions.
Sure. When you talk about the rand, I mean, much of what we've seen recently is because of the Turkish crisis and then instability in Argentina, and also Donald Trump ramping up trade war talk. That we can't control. But we can control what's happening here at home. So you say that business won't invest as much as is needed to pull this economy out of recession unless it feels comfortable that its money is okay. So what needs to happen?
Yes, okay. So I think what is important, and you summed it up quite nicely now, is that we have to realize very quickly that global headwinds are mounting, number one. Public finances domestically are stretched, and we can't rely on a central bank to cut interest rates because inflation is going up. So the fact of the matter is that we must quickly realize that we will have to become, and government specifically, will have to become more internally focused, creating a far more enabling environment for the private sector. And I think it's not rocket science. I think small stuff can make a big difference here. For example, if the government puts in a lot of time and energy to reduce red tape and bureaucracy, I certainly think that that can lift the mood for many of our respondents. I think that is quite important. Do not add to the regulatory burden of many of our respondents or corporates in South Africa. Lighten the regulatory burden, because more regulation is just an additional tax at a time when the economy, when companies are really battling to survive. I think there are other small stuff that the government can do. The government, for example, has many suppliers. Just pay them in time. Just make sure that you pay them within 30 days. If you don't, that creates all sorts of other negative ramifications in the system. I think the government, for example, and I'm going to stop here, and I think the government, for example, can also spend its capital or capex budgets much more efficiently, for example. And in doing so, also partner with the private sector through all sorts of PPPs in order to speed up the process, to get things going, to lift the mood and let the economy benefit from all of that.
Okay, so 2 questions. First, the regulatory environment. So right now, the big bugbear that's being spoken about is the issue around land, right? So now then the government says that no, but business is against inclusive growth. I mean, we need to fix this land situation because it's not right that South Africa grows and it's not inclusive growth or it's jobless growth. So how does business respond to the fact that perhaps business is also not coming or bringing what it needs to the table when it comes to sorting out the land issue?
That's why all the stakeholders need to sit around the table and really, really talk these things out. I work for a bank. FNB is in the First Rand group, and I can tell you that banks are very keen to participate in this debate and to come up with solutions in order to speed up land reform, for example. It's in their best interest to actually do it. I also think farmers generally, I can't talk on their behalf, but the impression I get is that farmers generally are also keen to participate, to come forth with solutions. They realize that things need to change. The status quo can't prevail. I think the bigger issue is not should it happen, the bigger issue is how. That's why we need to have an intensive debate and throw around punches, right? And be forthright in the conversations and sort these things out. The unfortunate reality is that the ANC has now suggested that they have a particular position, that the constitution needs to change, and that's fine, but the sad reality is that it's probably going to take a year for us to get the finer detail of exactly how the ANC wants to change the constitution. That is another year of uncertainty.
Sure.
So unless we have all the detail, who's going to invest in agriculture now?
Second question.
And that's a problem. So speed up the process.
All
Give
right.
us answers.
All right, speed up the process. Let's get to the table, throw punches, whatever. Let it get messy to get clean. Second question. You say that government can use its money better to, broker more PPPs. Where is government not using its money better? And how should it go about spending better?
I mean, the best example of a successful PPP is the renewable energy sector. Why don't we replicate that in other sectors as well? Just an example.
Ettienne, we are out of time. We'll leave it there for now. That was Ettienne le Roux, who's the Chief Economist at RMB.